much as we can cover in the 2 hours that we have. So if you guys have any questions along the way or want to share any stories you want to discuss, let us know. So we handed out a "How professional are you?" questionnaire. So if you guys can pull that one out and fill it out. We're not going to take that from you. We're not going to look at it. This is more kind of like a reflection activity for you guys to do. So if you can complete it, I'm going to go over the questions that are on there. So how professional are you? Always, sometimes, or never. So you get to work on time. If you're running late, you let your supervisor and your family know. Do you always do that? Do you sometimes do that? Do you never do that? You seldomly miss work. If you do plan on missing, you inform whoever you need to inform. You put in as much effort as you can into your work. You attempt to solve problems. You follow directions from your supervisor. You follow company policies. You behave in a professional manner. So just kind of give yourself a score. And then there's two sections at the bottom where you can provide a short little narrative. So I'm most proud of my ability to. So we want you guys to fill that out right now. And then at the very end of the presentation, when we come to the conclusion, we want you to fill out the last part. Okay?
All right, professionalism definition. The skill, good judgment, and polite behavior that is expected from a person who is trained to do a job well. So some of the basics to professionalism. Arriving on time to your session, keeping your electronics, phones, iPads, whatever you bring on silent or vibrate so you're not using them during session. I know sometimes you use your phones as timers, things like that, but just making sure that there's no texting or phone calls coming through. We want to make sure parents know that you guys are there specifically to run your sessions and not doing anything else. Speaking clearly and politely, having a clean appearance, and dressing appropriately.
And for dressing appropriately, we also want to talk to you guys about this a little bit because this kind of depends on your session. So if you're going to go swimming with your client, then dressing in a one-piece swimsuit is appropriate. If you're going to have session in the home, you want to look professional. Everybody in here looks fine. But don't show up to session in basketball shorts and a wife beater, or flip-flops. You still want to look professional, unless you guys are going to the beach or something like that. So dressing appropriately, think about where your session is being conducted. So we created some scenarios, and this is where we want you guys to kind of interact more with us. So I'll just read the scenarios, and we're going to talk about what you would say. So don't just tell us what you would do. We want to hear an actual dialogue. So the first one is, a parent on your case has been complaining to you about the case supervisor. Give a short dialogue of how you would approach your supervisor about the situation, as well as your response to the parent. So who wants to give us a short dialogue?
Talk to them privately outside of the home for a couple minutes.
Okay, so that's what you would do, but what would you say?
Oh, you know, what could I do to help you? I know this is a very difficult situation, and many times a therapist is having a better relationship with them because they've been there longer, maybe, and that has happened to me definitely many times. And so sometimes you use your therapist and be a team and manage the situation because for insurance purposes and everything, the supervisor has to be there, and explaining such situations does make it more worthwhile for the conversation to go the right direction.
Okay. Anybody else?
I think I would just kind of let the parent vent to me, but I wouldn't say anything. And then once she was done, or he, then I would go approach the supervisor and let them know. Yeah.
So we're going to talk about this a lot more. But one of the biggest things with professionalism here, because of the 3-tier model that we have at Proof, we always want to direct everything back to the case supervisor. So if you are the therapist on the case, and this, I'm sure this has happened to everybody at least once, and if it hasn't, it will. It is important to hear the parent out because we want to let them know that we are validating what they're telling us, but you don't want to engage in that conversation because that creates potential problems down the road. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, like dual relationships. So if the parent does complain to you about the supervisor on the case, something appropriate would be, like, okay, I'm going to make sure that I talk to the supervisor about this and see what he or she can do. And that's kind of it. But you don't want to really engage and for you to try to solve that problem because that's more of somebody at a higher level to resolve. Okay?
Your supervisor on the case comes to observe session about twice a month. He or she has made some changes to the program that you do not agree with. You feel that you know the child better. Give a short dialogue of what you would say. How would you approach this scenario?
I would just be like, well, here's my concerns about this, and here's some things I've been running into and why. Whatever would be possible better alternative or something to consider.
What would be an appropriate location to have that conversation with the supervisor? Would you do this in session?
No, not in. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, anytime there's something that comes up, definitely don't have it in session. Try to call the supervisor afterwards, send an email, kind of discuss it. We don't want the parents to hear any kind of disagreements between the team, anything like that. If you are going to bring it up in session, just make sure, hey, I've been running this, I've been coming into, but make it very factual, so it doesn't seem like you're going against their recommendations as well.
And then it's also important to note that with our higher functioning kids, whenever we talk about anything in front of them, they're catching it. Even with our lower functioning kids, they catch it just because they're not vocal about it doesn't mean they don't understand what's going on. So we have to always remember that we need to respect the family as a whole, and that includes the client himself or herself. So if the mom does start to talk to you about the supervisor or you feel that a program isn't appropriate for that child, you don't want to do it during session in front of the child or in front of the parent because that could again lead to other problems. The third one, you don't feel that your supervisor provides you with enough support. You have already spoken to him or her about the situation 2 other times. Who do you contact next? Give a short dialogue of what you would say to that person. Okay, I'm going to start picking on people if you guys don't volunteer. Let's see. How about Elizabeth? Yes.
You would contact, depending if it was your co-soup or your soup. If it was your co-soup, you would contact your case supervisor. I'm not sure if you contacted Baba. I mean, maybe Heather. Or
We have our coordinators.
the coordinator.
Yeah, so if you ever have an issue or something comes up with a family, you've reached out to the BCBA, you haven't received that support or anything that you felt like was a good solution to the problem, you can contact any of our coordinators as well. Yeah, and we can give you guys a list of who they are, so you guys at any point, if you need to contact them, you can. For scheduling? Is that what you mean?
No.
Your case managers would be your schedulers. Yeah. So anything scheduling related, definitely go to them. Anything clinical related, go to your BCBAs and coordinators.
And you always want to try to go to the person that you're having that problem with first, because that's what's most professional. So if you are having the problem with your co-soup, you would go directly to your co-soup first. And then if you've already spoken to him or her, a couple times and nothing's changing, then you would go to the BCBA. And if the problem's directly with the BCBA, you follow the same. If you contacted them about the problem and nothing's changing, then you would go to the coordinator. So you always want to go to that person first to let them know what's going on, because oftentimes they might not even be that aware of what is going on or what they're doing, and we all deserve that feedback.
You observe that the STOOP PC, one-on-one on the case, discusses personal matters with the parents. Who do you talk to first? And let us know what you would say. So you could pick any one of those positions, but you overhear them having, or actually let's do 3 people and we'll have each person talk about each position. So if it's a supervisor that's discussing personal matters with the parents, what would you do? Who would you talk to? How would you approach it?
issue with them, and then if it continues, you would go to your case manager.
Okay. What about for you guys? So you're the one-on-one, and the PC is there during your session. And you notice that instead of doing PC, they're kind of talking about other things that they shouldn't be discussing with the family. What do you do? So you want to go to the PC first. So remember, always go to that person first because that's what's most professional. So you want to let the PC know and think about the setting. So you wouldn't do it during session, perhaps after session, or giving them a call if they leave session and you can't catch them. Letting them know, hey, I noticed that you were talking to mom and dad about this, and I just want to make sure that we do maintain those personal boundaries because it could affect the team as a whole. So just letting them know, hey, I heard that, I saw that, it's not appropriate. Because we have to hold each other accountable because we do work in teams. Okay?
One-on-one?
A moment where I saw like a break, maybe the child was on a break, I just kind of calmly take the one-on-one or technician aside and calmly just kind of redirect them. This is what we should focus on, and then I.
So have any of you guys ever been in a situation like this where you don't really know professionally what to do? Yeah? Okay. Share. Share with us.
I saw the other behavior technician that's at the same time as me, just like talk in a really friendly manner with the parents and not professional. And then also, like, sometimes they do offer food and he'll always take it, and I'm just like, I don't think you should. Like, a water is fine, or like a piece of fruit maybe, but like full on meals, like, that's not appropriate.
Right.
So I didn't know how to tell him at first.
I really like that you brought that up actually because that happens a lot. So you're right. If they say, do you want a glass of water? Or even sometimes I'm like, do you have some water? You know, I need some water, I'm thirsty. And that's totally fine. But as soon as you start engaging in more friendly activities, like sitting down and sharing a meal with the family, you've already opened up the door to all kinds of other potential problems, and you're crossing those boundaries. So yeah, if they offer food, just politely say no thank you. You can make something up. I always say I am allergic to things, but I'll say I'm allergic to that because it is unprofessional, and you don't ever want to feel that you have to do extra for a family because they've fed you or because they've done something additional for you. So just to keep it neutral, just water is okay.
So how about if you're teaching like self-help skills? Like I teach some clients to like go out to eat and like to order on their own and stuff like that. We go out with them and I order and I always pay for myself, but I feel kind of weird when they're all eating and I'm not. So I'll pay for my own meals.
And it's going to be case by case, so just talk to your supervisors on that case and see what's appropriate and what's not, depending on how often it's occurring, what you're teaching, what goals you're working on. So definitely talk to your supervisors and see, is this okay? But yeah, in situations like that, it is very different than being in the home and they're having dinner and you're sitting and having dinner with them.
Yeah.
Then it becomes more of a social setting. There's more conversations that are happening that are not pertaining to the client and what you're working on. So some of those things will be case by case.
So always just check with your supervisor and get that approved first. Okay, over here I saw other people nodding.
Yeah, so on Nate's case, I have like a difficult client, and yes, a lot of times mom will complain to me about, the programs that we're running, because we haven't really made much progress with this client for a few months, and it's been a little bit difficult, so a lot of times mom gets a little bit stressed out about it, and sometimes it's hard to figure out, like, what I should say, what I shouldn't say. Most of the time I'm like, oh, I'm addressing your concerns, like, I hear you out, and I'll try to contact the supervisor about that and, make sure that all of your concerns are heard. But, a lot of times when I come in, she's questioning, this and that and this and that, and it's a little bit stressful for me because, like, I'm just, following I'm trying the best that I can to, follow, what you want me to do with the case and, follow the protocols, but a lot of times she doesn't really understand, so.
And if you're in a situation like that where you're starting to feel uncomfortable,
right.
what would you do, or what would you tell somebody else to do? Because you shouldn't have to feel walking into session that
Right.
mom's going to have a half-hour conversation
Yeah.
and she's upset. So what would you do for yourself in that situation?
What do you mean?
If you're coming in and mom's consistently
Right.
having the same concerns and you're telling her, yes, I'm going to address it with them, and she continues, then what would you do? Because we don't want you to feel uncomfortable.
Right. I usually just, tell her, I understand your concerns, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and, this is, and I try to outline, the goals. Like, these are the goals that I'm working on right now,
Mhm.
and this is why I'm doing what I'm doing, and, this is what we learn in training. If you don't understand that, then you can call the supervisor and address the concerns with her. But, yeah, that's what if you want to talk about last time, that's what I told her last time, and she was a little bit concerned.
Yeah, and feel
about
free to
what's
reach
going on,
out to your supervisors and let them know,
Right.
hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable, or the same conversations keep coming up, and I've tried to redirect mom, it's not working, so then we can have those conversations with the parents as well and let them know when your technician does come in, they're working on session, they're working on goals, so we can have this conversation with them, and you can focus on the goals and behaviors, so we can have those conversations with them as well. So reach out to your supervisors if you're ever feeling uncomfortable, if something comes up, anything like that, let them know.
Sorry, some negative. I had a lot of copies, and I'm like, whoops. If you're ever like that uncomfortable and it keeps continuing, even if you have a good rapport and you're close with your supervisor, the co-sup, it doesn't hurt to even pick up the phone and be like, hey, can you after session, can you come out next week at any time you're available? That way, if she's or he or she's overlapping with you,
Right.
and you're all kind of talking, but he or she's addressing it with mom, so the parent feels like there's more connection.
Right.
Can you also address it not only with your supervisor but with PC as well?
Yeah, because they can have those conversations with the parents, go through the goals specifically with them, and also talk to them about, hey, these conversations need to happen with your PC or supervisor, things like that. So PC, your co-sup, call them, let them know, please come out next time, let them know what you need, because your supervisors are there to support you. So whatever that means, let them know so they can come out and help.
And we'll talk about that more too when we talk about maintaining your role. We'll talk about all that stuff too. So keep that one in mind. Okay, so striving for constant improvement and higher standards. So in order to be professional, you want to strive for constant improvement and higher standards, because no matter how amazing we all are, we can always be better. So it's important to create a support system in the workplace. And in this case, it includes your colleagues, so other behavior techs, the supervisor, BCBA, the parent consultant, and the family. So you want to maintain a positive attitude. And how does this happen? So how can you become better? How can you become more professional? So you want to hold yourself as well as others accountable. So we talked about this a little bit earlier. If you see somebody doing something that you know is not professional, it's not appropriate, it's okay to professionally call them out on it. And you should hold others accountable that they would do that for you as well, and kind of correct you if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And do you want to,
Is it appropriate to correct a PC or supervisor since they're ahead or they're at a higher role than the technician?
And it's not necessarily correcting, but maybe asking for clarification, or that's where that professional conversations come into place, instead of saying, you're doing it wrong, you don't know what you're doing, but, oh, can you clarify, because I thought this is what the goal was stating, or this is what I was instructed to do, so can we collaborate to make sure we're on the same page? So professionally finding a way to approach that without kind of bringing them down, which is a tough kind of boundary to kind of figure out those conversations. And that's why being professional and thinking about those things is really important, because you don't want to just call them out. And then especially if you're doing it in the home, which we don't want to do, then the parent's like, oh, maybe my PC doesn't know what they're talking about. So making sure that we stay united as a team, and then that communication and collaboration is important. So, nicely.
Yeah. So just saying, earlier, somebody mentioned that earlier as well, and saying things like, hey, I noticed that you were talking to mom about this, that could affect the team, can we talk about that? And then, okay, so looking past stereotypes. We work with families of all different cultures and backgrounds. So if you're put on a case and it's with a family that is a certain religion or they follow a different culture than you, um, and you already have this kind of mindset about this certain type of group of people, you want to look past that because that was definitely gonna uh, make it difficult for you to be professional because you're already going in with this mindset of, oh, these people are always like this. And then acknowledging and respecting differences. So again, that goes hand in hand with respecting or looking past stereotypes. Being able to know that every family is unique to him or herself. So therefore, you need to learn to be flexible and you need to adapt to the environment that you're placed in.
And then we have these same expectations for parents too, because they might have a technician that comes in that's a different culture, religion, race, whatever that may be, but we hold them to the same expectations that they still have to be respectful, professional with you guys as well. So if you're ever in a situation where you're feeling uncomfortable, let your supervisor know. All right. Communication. So frequent communication between team members is crucial. So constantly just kind of, if anything comes up, if parent says concerns that they have or they mention something that's happened, that's really important for the team to know. They had an outing and new behaviors came up, let your team know so PC can address it, your supervisor can address it, possibly put in new behavior goals, whatever that may mean. But just a lot of communication between the team is going to help everyone stay on the same page. Any situation that occurs during session, always communicate with the team. So I talked about that, but any conversation that they engage in personal topics. So if you're in session and parent starts talking about they're thinking about getting divorced and blah, 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 you want to let your team know, talk to your supervisor, let them know, mom continues to bring this up. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't know how to address it. I try to redirect. It's not working. So let the team know so that they can have those conversations with the parents. If they're making uncomfortable comments or statements to the team members, let your supervisors know. If they're making comments about other team members, and this happens quite often, we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but if they're unhappy with the supervisor or PC, or sometimes you'll hear, oh, well, the other therapist or technician does it this way, and you're doing it differently, or I like the way that you're doing it, but they're doing it this way. So let the team know so that way we can all kind of figure out what's going on and we can fix it and be working the same way. It may be uncomfortable to bring it up to your supervisors, but always communicate any of these situations with the team so that they can address appropriately with the family. So it is, like we talked about, like Ashley had brought up, it is sometimes uncomfortable, but we all need that feedback. And getting feedback is also part of being professional. You have to be able to receive that feedback as well.
Anybody have any questions so far? Now we're going to talk about dual relationships. So this is very difficult to avoid, but it's not impossible, just because of the fact that we are in homes and we're constantly interacting with families and we get to know grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and cousins. So it's very easy to become attached, not only to the client, but to the family as a whole. So you guys have to remember, though, that dual relationships are prohibited and completely unprofessional. So this includes you babysitting or tutoring or hanging out with the client outside of session, texting, talking to each other over the phone, all of that is included. And we put these things up there because they've happened and they happen. We know that they happen, but we don't want you guys to engage in any of this stuff. So if the family does ever ask you to babysit, no, that's a clear no. You have to maintain that relationship of professionalism. And you're there to provide direct one-on-one services for ABA solely. And you're not there to tutor or hang out and be their friends. So team members becoming friends with parents or caregivers, hanging out on the weekends, going out for dinner. So again, somebody brought up, what if you sit at dinner because you're working on self-help skills? That's completely different. So if your supervisors, hey, it's okay to do that next week because we are targeting this goal, that's totally fine. But once it becomes like a weekly routine, like we're all going out to dinner, then you start facing this dual relationship problem. the behavior techs or the PCs dating their supervisors, or behavior techs dating PCs, or PCs dating supervisors. It's not appropriate, and anytime you do develop a more intimate relationship with any of your colleagues, it's going to really create a barrier for you to be objective. And it's going to impact your objectivity, definitely. So you don't want to do those things. You want to stay away from those things. All dual relationships cross boundaries and are unprofessional. So dual relationships can start off so simply, just as Stephanie was saying earlier, a family offering you food and you taking it. If it becomes an ongoing thing, that family is going to expect more eventually. And we don't want that to ever happen. We want to make sure that they know that we're only there from 4:30 to 6:30 to do one-on-one, and then we go home, right? Your client is always your number one priority, and we are there for the family as well, but we're there for the child, ultimately, and to help him or her become more independent and live a more typical life, or as typical as they can live it. Does anybody have questions about dual relationships? Okay. So it's if you ever think about doing something or accepting something from a family and you're in any way doubting it and you're thinking, oh, this might be a bad idea, it's probably a bad idea. So just don't do it. So if you're in doubt, just don't engage. This is super tiny. Okay, we'll just read off of it. So maintaining your role. So you must always ensure that you know what your role is, whether it's behavior tech, a parent consultant, or if you're a supervisor or a co-sup, BCBA on the case. When you know your role and your role is clear to you, it allows you to remain professional because you know clearly what to do and what not to do. So on those tiny lists up there, it says what your role is as a behavior tech. And we only listed a few things because there are other things that we'll just talk about, and things that you're not supposed to do. So we'll talk about just the role of a behavior tech right now. And then somebody did talk about the PC and is it okay to talk to your PC about certain things. So we'll touch on that because I know some of you guys in here did say that you do PC. So as a behavior tech, your role is to implement activities to target the client's goals. So that means that you are responsible for running session because the supervisor isn't always out there. So it's different if you're not sure how to target a goal and you want the supervisor to model it for you. Of course, then we would do that, but you are responsible for implementing these activities and kind of being creative and creating a good session for the client. And it's your role and you're responsible to inform the team of any cancellations from you or from the family. So if the family does cancel, if the client falls asleep during session or becomes sick during session, or you're going to be late, anything like that, you need to inform the team, so the BCBA, the supervisor, and you need to inform the family all the time. So often, I know it's hard to remember, oh, I text one person, but I forgot to text the other. So just try to make it a habit to just do a really quick group message. Include the BCBA and include the co-sup if there is a co-sup on your case, and let them know, hey, I'm going to be late to session. I've already informed mom. It's part of your role to also be receptive to feedback. So we've talked about that quite a bit this morning already. Accepting that we can all improve in a certain area, and being receptive to feedback also makes you professional. And we've talked about striving for more, so this allows you to do that. And you want to communicate everything that happens on the case with the rest of the team. So that's your role and your responsibility as well. And we capitalized everything because we really mean everything. So there have been situations where the behavior techs don't tell the other team members that something happened because it seemed insignificant, or it just wasn't a big deal, or it was just so small they didn't think and then parents tell us a different story So that happens. We don't want that to happen. So even if something happened at school or at home or whatever setting you're in for the one-on-one services, and the client had a huge tantrum, or somebody aggressed towards the client, or the client aggressed towards somebody, or anything like that, just tell the supervisor. If you felt that you had a good handle on the situation, still inform the team. Hey, the session was really rough today, but this is what I did. It ended up being okay. I just want to let you know that this is what happened. So letting the team know everything. And it is not your role to discuss changes in scheduling, to conduct parent consultation unless you are a parent consultant. And you don't want to ever provide any kind of informal counseling to the family. So you guys all kind of talked about families venting to us, and it's okay to listen, but not engage. So you can respond with just very generic statements like, I'm sorry, that's hard, I understand, and that's kind of keep it at that. But as soon as you start asking questions, you open that up to possibility of dual relationships, and we don't want to do that.
You also want to minimize those venting sessions as well, because sometimes you're only there for 2 hours and we can't spend an hour of our time listening to mom vent about her concerns. So politely kind of letting them know, I hear you and I'm really sorry what's going on, and redirecting it back to the client. Oh, let me go see what he's doing. And again, direct them back to your supervisors. So I understand, and feel free to call the supervisors and they can come out and talk to you and have those conversations with you. But we don't want to waste the client's time, your time. You guys have a lot to work on, so minimize a lot of those conversations.
And then it's also not part of your role to create new goals or to modify goals. So earlier when we gave you guys the scenario of a supervisor adding a new target or modifying a current target that you as a behavior tech don't think is appropriate, you can tell the supervisor that and say, hey, I don't really agree with that because when I run the program, he or she does this and that or responds this way. So it's better to let the supervisor know your concerns with the new goal or the modified goal and offer suggestions because you do see the child more than we do. But don't take it, don't take freedom and do it on your own and create a new goal or change the current goal. Always let the supervisor know first, and then if he or she agrees, they get to make that decision. Okay. And you don't want to ever create behavior support plans either. So that's not part of your role either. If you're not really sure how to target a certain behavior under different settings, talk to the supervisor, and the supervisor will create a plan for you to follow that will be clear. So when it comes to communicating with the team, somebody in the corner asked about talking to your PC, and is it okay to talk to your PC? It is okay to talk to your PC if you can't get a hold of your supervisor, but always try to talk to your supervisor first. So if you're not able to talk to the supervisor because you can't get a hold of them for whatever reason, talk to the PC and also follow up with an email. That's always professional as well, and let the supervisor know, hey, I wasn't able to get a hold of you, but I talked to so-and-so on the case, and they said they would follow up with you. Because as a PC, the same thing, you don't have that independence to just make that ultimate decision. It still has to go back to the BCBA on the case and the COSUP to work together and make that ultimate decision. So you can communicate these things to them, but ultimately we want you guys to always go to the BCBA and the supervisor on the case.
Does anybody have anything to add to either list, or maybe possible questions as to things that you're not sure if it's part of your role or not, or things that you've done and you're not sure if it's okay, or
anything, guys? Is there anything that you feel that you do on your cases now that you feel you maybe shouldn't be doing? Like creating things, or sending out or making calls, or
Well, I do session with my clients' parents or siblings. I do session at both homes.
okay.
And sometimes mom is trying to prove how behaviors don't occur a lot in
monitoring?
Talk to your PC, talk to your
Yeah, that's what I was
supervisor.
gonna say.
But that happens a lot. We've had
Yeah.
cases like that where, well, it's only happening at dad's house. It never happens here. So again, holding them accountable, like you said, to the environment because things are different. And so kind of pointing that out to them. But as a technician, you don't have to do that. So talk to your PC, talk to your supervisors, let them know this continues to come up. This is what mom's concerns are. And they can have those conversations with her and point that out to her.
And then always making you guys can make suggestions to us because you do see the kids more often than we do. So suggesting like, hey, is PC happening in both environments? Like, is there any way the PC and telling the supervisor that? Is there any way the PC could go to both homes and then having the supervisor talk to the PC on the case and bring that up? So we're always open to your suggestions and your ideas as long as they're appropriate to the client and to the family. But yeah, that's a conversation that the supervisor would have with the family or the PC would have with the family in that case. Anybody else? Okay. I want to bring something up that is families have asked me multiple times, and it's the bringing stimuli into the home. So whatever that is, in the form of toys or worksheets or books, whatever it is, they always ask if the supervisor is responsible for that, or if the PC is responsible for that, or if the one-on-one is responsible for that. And again, we're going to go back to your role as a behavior tech. It's to implement programs and to target these goals. So you are responsible for kind of becoming creative and finding things. The supervisors will bring things out, but that doesn't happen all the time. So if you have toys at home, there's stuff here in the office that you guys can check out. You're kind of responsible as well for trying to come up with different activities to do with the child, in addition to what's already been recommended or suggested by the rest of the team.
If there's something specific too, because we don't expect you guys to go and buy a whole bunch of toys. So if there's something specific that you think this kid is really going to like this, or mom suggested this, let your supervisors know, and they can help you get those items or figure out a way to make them or whatever is needed. So let them know whatever that stimuli, also token boards, things that you think would be beneficial. Let them know, hey, I think this might really work for my client, and they can help in getting those out to you.
Any questions?
Feedback. As situations arise, all team members need to be open and receptive to feedback. So it is hard to give and receive feedback at times, but we all need to make sure that we are in a professional setting. This is our job, and we're both giving it and receiving it in the most professional way. But we need to be open to that, and that's what makes us better clinicians, and it's going to help the child out. If something's not working and your supervisor comes out and gives you that feedback, just make sure to politely listen. If you have questions, you can definitely ask them for more clarification, ask them to model it for you, but being very open to their suggestions and feedback. At times, it may be uncomfortable to address certain things with your supervisor, although constructive feedback makes us each grow in a position and make us become better clinicians. We kind of talked about that. If you're finding it difficult to address something with your supervisor, always feel free to reach out to one of the clinical coordinators, and they can help you devise a plan, have a meeting with the supervisor if needed, or just give you suggestions on how to appropriately reach out and have that conversation with them.
Okay, overlaps. So we do have sessions that are held in the school setting or after school programs. So a lot of the times before that happens, the family will request an overlap or the supervisor will want to do an overlap. Whether it's to speech, OT, physical therapy, or at the school or whatever program the child's enrolled in. So for overlaps, it's typically always going to be the supervisor that does the overlap. Very rarely will it be the behavior tech. However, if the supervisor can't make it out, then the COSIP can't make it out, and the PC can't make it out, and the behavior tech is the one that has to do the overlap, you have to make sure that you first get approval for that. So before you do any kind of overlap, you have to get a release of information signed, and by the parent, and that says that they give you permission to talk to whatever center it is that you're overlapping at about the client. And it's important to discuss with the supervisor as to what specific conversations can be discussed with outside vendors. So if any of you guys do have any school sessions, or if you do have sessions in any of these programs, you know that you're not supposed to discuss anything about the client with anybody at the center. So unless you have permission with the director of the the group that you guys are at, then you can talk to the director. But you're not supposed to discuss any client information with other kids, with other parents, with other teachers, unless the family has given you permission to do so. And if they have, it needs to be in writing and it needs to be signed. The supervisor, typically, like we said, is usually going to be the first one that is going to overlap. And once you do start sessions in the school setting or whatever other setting you're in, the supervisor would come with you. Similar to just the in-home sessions, the first session, the supervisor is always there with you. Collaboration is important across all disciplines, but confidentiality needs to be priority. So if we are in other settings outside of the home, we do want to collaborate with teachers and speech pathologists and whoever it is that we're interacting with, but you still need to maintain that confidentiality and respect the client's privacy. So the supervisor may need to talk with the family before attending to discuss their concerns so that these can be addressed. So did anybody here do a school session?
I just started preschool. I'm also at like a Korean church for another client, so it's interesting getting used to that.
Yeah. Anybody else? You have a school case? Yeah. So have you guys come across this where either other kids will start asking you, because kids are curious, they'll ask, or other teachers will ask you, or other adults will ask you, like, why are you with Johnny? Why are you always following Johnny around? Have you guys come across that? Mm-hmm. Okay, and how do you respond? What's a professional response?
I just say I'm a teacher's helper.
Okay.
I'm here to help your teacher.
Do the kids sometimes ask you, well, can you help me on my homework?
Sometimes I do. If it's appropriate and like the team needs help, I might, maybe I'm not supposed to do that, but I might.
And
It's
that's
good if you want to blend in.
right.
Your
Yeah.
child,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say too. Sometimes it's, we have school cases where we tell our behavior techs, we want you guys to kind of fade back as much as you can and jump in when behaviors arise, if they arise. And if other kids do start to ask questions like, hey, I need some help, like it's okay to give them a little bit of help here and there. Because you do want to blend in and you don't want to draw attention to that child more than they already are getting if they get that extra attention for behaviors. Any other questions about overlaps?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you think of any, let us know.
So this kind of talks about the same, but specifically in schools. So maintaining boundaries and confidentiality between other aides or staff members. So same thing as those dual relationships, but we can't become friends with those aides or staff members in the schools. We have to make sure that we're specifically there for our client, and that's our priority. So not talking about any of our personal things that are going on. Again, depending on the release of information that you get, you may not be able to provide any information on the client either to those people. Making sure that releases are always signed before you guys are in there, and knowing specifically who can I talk to and who is not okay for me to talk to. Because in schools it's hard because there's different aides, there's different teachers that come in and out, different directors that are there. So just making sure that you're really specific on who it's okay for me to provide the information, and if not, then who do I direct it to, and what do I do moving forward. So those dual relationships, don't go out with those aides, dating them, going out to bars with them, really maintaining that professional boundaries with them. When in the school environment, making sure that your conversations are professional, so you're not talking negatively about our company, the clients, co-workers, supervisors, anything like that, but making sure all conversations are related specifically to the client or what you're there to do. And then what can you say to redirect school staff if or when they're asking you questions about the client? So if a teacher or an aide comes up to you and says, hey, why are you with him? What diagnosis does he have? What goals are you working Where is he at? How do parents feel about him getting these services? Or how do you get the services? What would your conversation to them be? How would you redirect them? Would you redirect them?
Because it's easy to fall into those conversations, guys. Because you want, especially if you're in the school, you've already built that rapport with the family, so they like you. And you want to be liked in the school as well. So oftentimes we think if we engage, they're going to think I'm awesome and they're going to like me.
And a lot of times they're asking these questions not to catch you or to put you in an uncomfortable position. Sometimes they really are curious. They might have a child or somebody that they know that may need these services. They're like, oh, where are you from? How do you get these services? How does it work? What do you do? So it's, a lot of times it's just out of curiosity, but we still have to make sure that we're protecting confidentiality of our clients. So what would you guys do?
So let's split it up. There was a lot of questions.
Yeah.
So let's, okay, they're asking you about the child's diagnosis.
Can't get that.
So what
But
would you
can,
respond?
Well, I can't share that with you, but I've worked with lots of kids that have lots of different stuff.
Anybody else?
I would just say I can't disclose that.
Okay, yeah.
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 I sometimes say I don't know. Like I'm just here for
Oh, okay, you just say
behaviors.
like I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can do that too. I don't know. I'm just here. I'm just here helping the teacher, you know? Or, yeah, I can't disclose that information. Okay, what about if, what else did you ask? You asked a few things.
If they're looking for services, so what company do you work from? How do you get the services? Is it private pay, insurance? What do I do? I want to get you with my child. I see how good you're working with this client. I want you to be with my child. How do I get you to work with him? Direct it to your supervisors too. So let them know. I'll let my supervisor know, and they can kind of reach out to you or get your information as well. So it's not you giving specific information about certain things. We don't know what this other client, their diagnosis is. We don't know the family dynamics. We don't know anything about them. So we don't want to say, sure, I can come. I can start next week. We can get services started.
So then would we like ask them for their info and say, hey, give me your info. I can pass this to my
I would
supervisor.
just
How's
let
that work?
your supervisor know. Just say, hey, I just want to let you know this parent keeps approaching me,
Okay.
and they can talk to the teacher or aides. They probably would know who it is.
Gotcha.
So just let your supervisor know this parent's looking for this information. Can you follow up with them?
Yeah. Because you never want to be caught in that situation where, let's say you do take their information, and then they're going to continuously contact you, you know, and approach you like, hey, have you talked to that person that
Gotcha.
you were supposed to, or how come I haven't heard from you? And so you don't want to put yourself in a situation that, you know, that's going to be even more difficult to navigate through. Another thing with schools, I had a situation. The scheduling people left, but this would have been perfect for them, where we were trying to staff a case over the weekend, and we didn't have anybody because it was on a Sunday, so it was difficult. So the mom informed the behavior tech on the case that somebody at her church, she wanted us with her at the church, somebody at her church told her that she could, you know, why didn't she just apply to proof, and that way she could just work with her kid on Sunday because she was there anyway. And so this goes back to the communication. The behavior tech called me and said, hey, mom said that this is what she's planning on doing. So I then informed the BCBA, and we were able to nip that before it went anywhere further. But again, just that communication, because had she not told me that and had mom done that, who knows what would have happened. And that's not professional, right? So we need to always communicate, and we need to make sure that when we are in schools, we are objective all the time. And the only way to do that is if you maintain those personal boundaries and remain professional with everybody in that environment.
I don't know if this relates, but I have a situation where two of my clients go to the same church, and one of my clients wants me to go to like a Halloween thing that they're doing for session like during that time, and I don't want to go because I don't want to see my other client because I feel like maybe like my other kid on my
tell her, what do I say to her? I don't know how to, how do I just say no?
Is it during your typical session time?
It's not.
Okay.
So she wants me to like rearrange
Change schedule. That could be one thing that I'm really sorry, but I'm already booked during that time. Or talk to your supervisor, because if she really needs somebody there, they can always see if the other technician can go, if they can send out a sub, or maybe the PC or supervisor can go and say, hey, you know what, I haven't seen him in a social situation or out in the community in a while, so I'll just come and run session instead. If you're feeling uncomfortable, we don't want to put you in that situation ever.
I think because I've done like sessions during those times, during that time of like
that she's looking for.
Yeah. I'm like,
yeah. So just let her know. I'll let my supervisor know. It's typically not my usual session time. Because again, like we talked about earlier, we can't as well just change schedules. The schedule that you're assigned to be at that day and time, that's what you want to stick to. So if they're asking to change things, that also needs to be communicated with the supervisor's scheduling to make sure that's even a possibility. Looking at the hours, are we going to go over hours for that week? So all of that needs to be taken into account. So just letting her know, like I'll let my supervisor know and I'll get back to you to see what we can do, because we have to talk to scheduling. We have to make sure that we can do that, and then they can have those conversations with her.
Anybody else? And then also, Ronit brought up a good point when she said that with anytime you're doing any kind of overlap at a school or a session at a school or like an outside event, make sure that the child actually needs you to be there with them. Because if behaviors are low when they're out in the community and they don't really need that behavioral support, then you don't really need to be there.
That happens a lot, where they're like, we're going to a birthday party and we need help. But sometimes it's just having that extra person there, rather than he has a really difficult time engaging with peers, or he has tantrums transitioning. Sometimes it's just nice to have another person there, but it's not productive for us to be there.
And again, just making sure you get approval for that stuff first, anyway, if it's outside of your normal session time. Okay, social media. So everyone needs to be treated with respect, families and the clients, inside and outside their homes. So there are so many apps and things, social media. So Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter. I don't even know what else there is, but there's a ton. So it's unprofessional and it violates confidentiality to post anything about your clients on any kind of social media outlet. So this includes pictures as well as any type of status updates. So I have seen in the past people who will actually Snapchat parts of their sessions and send them. So everybody always says this. Things on the internet are not, they don't just delete. You can delete them. They go somewhere. So don't do that. It's disrespectful to the client, and it's disrespectful to the family, and it's disrespectful to proof. So you guys all represent proof when you're out there working. So we want to make sure that we are representing proof in a positive light, because proof also represents you. So don't do it. Also, no pictures, obviously, ever. And people have asked us, well, what if the family wants to take a picture of me with the client? So then that's where we say that's really up to you. So if the family wants a picture with you and the client and other siblings for whatever reason, and they're going to keep that picture and they want to post it on their personal Facebook wall or Instagram or whatever social media outlet they're using, then you can decide if you want to take a picture with them. However, you do not say, hey, text me that picture, and then you later post it. During session today, this is what I did. And so it violates HIPAA, so don't do it. Status updates, that's also violating HIPAA. So if you are on Facebook or any other Twitter, I don't even know what else there is, all those ones, don't put up, today during session, my 5-year-old punched me in the face and bit my, don't do it. Because then what happens is you open that up to comments from strangers. So if you post something like that about a client, and it doesn't even have to be something like that. It could be something great. You know, like today my kid tied his shoes for the first time. People are going to start commenting on that, and especially the more negative status updates with, you know, that involve aggression or any kind of severe behavior. People will comment nasty things and they'll laugh and they'll joke about it, and it's just not appropriate, and it's extremely disrespectful. Even if the family is not aware of you doing that, again, striving for that constant improvement isn't going to happen if you guys engage in any kind of activity like that. So just don't do it at all. Anything. Your phone shouldn't even be out during session to take pictures or post status updates unless you're using it for a timer like Ronit mentioned, or as reinforcement. And even then, you need to ask permission from the family. So if mom is okay with you using your timer on the phone, then use it. If mom's okay with you using the phone as a reinforcer, then you use it. But if they say, no, he has his own iPad or his own phone, or use that, then you do that. You always ask permission. So this is super, super, super serious, guys, because it keeps happening more and more, and I keep seeing it more and more. So just be careful. Treat your families with respect, just the way you would want to be treated if you had a child, or if you do have a child. Okay, so now we come to our conclusion. That questionnaire that we gave you guys at the beginning of the presentation has a few lines at the bottom, and it asks you an area that you would like to improve in when it comes to creating that more professional view. So fill that in, and I will do this by. So anything that you feel or you know that you could be doing better, and what you plan on doing after this training to ensure that you keep that going. Okay, so if you guys are done filling that out, we're going to now break you guys up into groups. So we can do some role-playing activities, but that concludes the PowerPoint part of the presentation, okay? Okay, guys, now that you are in groups of 3, what we want you guys to do is in each group, amongst yourselves, share a situation that you came across that was difficult for you to handle, and what about the situation was unprofessional from either other team members, the family, don't use names, or client codes, and what you did to resolve it, who you spoke to, what the outcome was, and then pick one situation. So each of you guys is going to share one, and then choose one, and we're going to have each of you present as a group that one situation that you chose. But share, so each of you should be sharing 3 things, okay? Okay, so you all had time to kind of discuss a situation that you all have been in. We're going to go around the room, and we need you guys to present on one of the scenarios that you talked about. So who wants to go first? Okay.
I was talking about a case I had previously. So I had a mom and a dad. They're married and stuff, but I was giving services to their child, and the mom totally believed he needed services, and the dad completely thought he did not need services, and so he would always come up with, like, and the dad was a full-time worker, so he wasn't around most of the time, so usually I was working with the kiddo with mom at the house. The dad would be there maybe once a month during session, but during that time during session, it was like kind of walking on eggshells, because he would always ask me, like, oh, do you think this is a typical behavior of a 5-year-old, or do you think he really has this diagnosis? And because it's not our place to diagnose, sometimes it was very difficult to talk to dad, and so sometimes during session I would have to, like, kind of go back when dad was there, and then, but it was more of him not, thinking his child needs services.
So what did you do with Dad? Did you have a talk? Did you have somebody else talk to him?
Well, I went to my supervisor and I kind of told her, like, you know, that one time a month, sometimes it's difficult because Dad doesn't believe he needs services. So I kind of redirected him to the supervisor and told, and Mom would always like apologize to me about it. So it was, you know, it's different when you have that struggle when they're divorced, but when they're married together, it's like even worse. Because then it's like their issue, not mine. So I kind of told Mom, like, well, we'll have the PC come out and hopefully talk to him a little more in the supervisor and kind of let them deal with the issue.
Yeah. That's perfect. Okay. You guys want to share next?
Sure. For professionalism, we talked about how much is appropriate to share with parents, like having the boundary of being friendly but not unprofessional, and how that can kind of get crossed if you like the parent, or maybe you have something similar or in common with them, and sometimes it can be helpful to get them involved in implementing your strategies if they like you. So.
Have you guys had a situation where you felt like the parent was trying to get more out of you than what you were giving them?
In terms of questioning?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So we talked about this in our last training, and what is too much to share. So if the way we look at it is, if you wouldn't tell, if you're okay telling a stranger what you're going to tell this parent, then it's probably not harmful, right? But if this is information you would give to your mom, your dad, your boyfriend, girlfriend, or a close friend, you probably should not be telling the parent. So, if you say, hey, if they ask you how your weekend was, it was really good, I went to have dinner with my family, that's okay. But if you say, oh, it was awesome, I went out with my family, and I got so drunk, and we did this, not okay. So, really basic, and it's either way, you're just sharing you went out to dinner with your family, and it's okay, but one of them is more okay, and the other one is not at all. Okay, who's next?
I guess that part came in.
Okay.
So me and Chen worked on a case together. This is an older client, he's 13. And, we usually have really productive sessions with him. We work really well together, but, I've been working with him for like 8 or 9 months. And I think we've had like 2 or 3, like he's usually really good during session, but we've had like 2 or 3 like major meltdowns, and he's pretty big. He's like the same height as me. So like when he has like a meltdown, it's actually kind of scary. So the first time I encountered it, I didn't like really know that we were supposed to stay throughout, like, and make sure the situation was calmed down. I had a client right afterwards, and so actually my client punched a window, and the window broke. His hand was bleeding. So I kind of panicking. I was like, what do I do? So I kind of this was like half an hour before session ended. So I mean, it kind of cooled down a little bit before I left, but I don't think the situation was completely taken care of. Before I left, I was washing his hand in the sink, and I kind of walked out. I did call my supervisor about it and notify the whole team of what happened, but I didn't know I was supposed to stay. But then it happened again a couple of months later, a similar situation where we had a major meltdown, and that time I did stay like an extra 30, 45 minutes to make sure, he was calmed down. He ended up laying in bed and like putting himself to sleep eventually, and then I left and made sure Dad was okay. But the second situation, he was pretty aggressive toward Dad. He's never been aggressive toward me, which is kind of strange, but he's very aggressive toward his dad, and he like kind of hurt his dad really bad. So I was like, oh, do I call 911? So it's kind of a stressful situation, but I think I handled it a lot more professionally the second time. And then the first time, maybe it wasn't as professional. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And you learn. Yes.
So, yeah.
It happens. You learn. For next time.
Yeah.
And then with calling 911, that's a good thing you brought up. If the client is ever really in danger, a danger to him or herself or to others, then it is appropriate to do that, and then immediately following up with your supervisor. But yeah, if it's ever a situation that is really dangerous and you can't really take control of it, then that would be appropriate.
You know how usually you have a session right after and then you have to leave in person?
Yeah, so my session with this client started at 2:30 to 4:30, and then I had another session at 5. So
I was wondering, like, is it okay to be late for that one?
Just step out and call the supervisor, family, let them know kind of that you're going to be running late, so they're not expecting you. So ask the family, we're just going to step out for 5 minutes. I just need to let them know I'll be late, and then follow up with the team and just let them know afterwards why. Yeah. But you want to make sure that the client is safe, the family's safe. Make sure that things are okay before you leave.
Yeah, yeah. In situations like that, then it would be okay for you to be late.
So I can talk about my situation. So I was just telling them that recently, actually, I'm bilingual, so I speak Spanish to my parents, so I going to Spanish. So I thought we were on an outing, you know, with the park, and then we went to the doctors, and I thought we were going to take a medicine for the children. You know, a lot of our children take medication. And it ended up being that we went to take medication for the parent, and the parent asked me to help him fill out a form, because it was in English, and translate it. So I was getting I was asking information like your birthday, like, you know, things that I feel like I should have known. So he was asking me, like, can you fill this out for me because I don't understand it. So it ended up being that we were there for the parent and not the child, and I felt like I was, you know, like that wasn't a role I should be playing, and I felt like he was treating me like a babysitter, and that I was there to help him, or he's not for like him, and I was like, I mean, I did it because I was in a situation where outside, you know, but I didn't know how to handle it, and I still have to do it. Well, now I know I have to talk to my supervisor, but it happened 2 days ago, so it's very recent.
And that's where we were talking about those dual relationships. Sometimes it's so hard because it's not just, they don't just come and say, hey, be my friend, let's go hang out this weekend. But sometimes it's like that, but that does cross those boundaries where now you know information that you probably shouldn't know.
Yeah, and I felt uncomfortable because I was like, someone's supervising, and like, what's your score? It was like, so are you sure you know this? It's kind of like, but I guess he felt comfortable with me because I was gonna, you know, I was able to help him and stuff like that. And he even asked me like, you can help me fill out like an application for my wife and stuff, and I was just like, yeah, I don't think so. I didn't say that, but I said, I like went over to the lady and I was like, oh, I'm here. She was like looking at me like who is she? Like, you don't look like them. Like, why are you filling out paper stuff? Like, you know, information. And I was like, oh, I'm here. Like, I'm a teacher and stuff. And I was like, he wants to form for the wife. He's like, oh, no, the wife has to come up. So she noticed something was weird. So she kind of helped me out. Where I was like, oh, I can't.
And just like we talked about before with the school stuff, and she had said, I'm so sorry, I can't disclose that, or I can't help with that. Just politely decline and say you can't do it. Yeah.
But I feel like, like I said, it happened 2 days ago, but I feel like I should call my supervisor. Like, I was in a situation, and I feel like I was uncomfortable, and I just felt that I probably shouldn't, but I felt like I was in the spot. But maybe we can talk to the parent about, I'm there for the client, and I can help you guys out, like, in the house, certain questions that you have, but nothing else outside of personal information.
Yeah, and the similar scenario has come up in the past multiple times, and I know it's something we've discussed during other trainings. Another problem with doing that, besides the dual relationship, and it's just not your role, is what if you fill it out and you fill out something wrong, and then parents now are going to say, like, well, you filled it out for me. So again, don't put yourself in situations that can really come back and have more severe consequences.
You don't want the parents, like, you don't want to feel like someone's taking advantage of you.
Yeah.
So it's going to repeat.
Yeah, I felt that.
Incorporate into different things. I felt like when you were talking, maybe that's how you felt, right?
Yeah, like I felt like, wait, like I'm not here to like fill out all your forms, like your tax deductions, like stuff that I felt like uncomfortable asking him like social.
I just try to get the parents to do as much independently as they can, and then if they can't, just direct it.
Yeah, and I felt so uncomfortable when we were like in a public setting, and then like that's why I said like the other lady was like, what is she doing? Like she's filling out the information, and that's when she kind of noticed. And I was like, oh, you tell him to come back. Like, well, somebody will be here to help him if he can't fill it out. And like like he doesn't understand it. We have somebody here that can help. And I felt like that's what she was telling me, and like she totally like helped,
yes, follow up with your supervisor about that situation for sure, so that it doesn't happen to you again.
Yeah.
Okay, do you guys have any other
I had one more.
questions?
Did you
Oh,
guys
one
have-
more?
Right?
No, I think they were part of the same.
Oh, good.
No, I think they had.
Oh, okay, yeah, you guys had one.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a ongoing time where the mom, one of the therapists has had to miss time because of a death in the family, and the mom was complaining about it a lot, and initially I was like, okay, I think this will die down over time, but she still kind of makes snide remarks, so I think it's kind of reached the point where I need to raise it as an issue too.
Yeah, and then have, that's, you know, a conversation that the supervisor would have then with the mom. And talk about scheduling and figure that situation out. Okay, so we just wanted to end with this little quote. Professionalism is not a label you give yourself, it is a description you hope others will apply to you. So we can all say, yeah, I'm professional, because it makes you sound like you're professional. But we want other people to say that about us, because that's when it has true meaning. So if you guys don't have any questions, that concludes our presentation. Thank you for coming.